what does that month financially look like for you? What's been your best month here at One Call Closers?
Yeah, so that has definitely been a big journey because my first month I think was $300 in commission. Now the last month was indeed my best one, and that in closing I did $15K.
Damn, $15,000. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Closers Network podcast. Guys, the only podcast that you want to be paying attention to if you're looking to absolutely crush it in the remote high ticket sales space. Whether you're new or whether you're seasoned, this is the podcast for you. Guys, today we have a special guest who's taken a unique path in the world of high ticket sales. Our guest today started selling at just 15 years old, hustling bikes and reselling shoes in college just to make some extra cash. But it wasn't until he walked away from the corporate grind, that he discovered high ticket closing, a decision that has transformed his life and his career. But hey, there's a twist to it, right? Before he ever closed a high ticket deal, he closed out on runways. This guy's packed his bags early, left his 9-to-5, and became a model, gracing fashion across Europe in cities like Madrid, Milan, and Berlin. He's lived in over 10 different places by the age of 25. And he's just really adaptable. He's pushed through sales, and there's a lot in his message that I think a lot of you are going to be able to relate to. And one thing he really hated was not being in control of his income. So he realized waiting for the next modeling gig was not going to cut it for him. So he made a pivot and decided to go all in on sales and hasn't looked back since. He's got a powerful piece of advice for us today, and we're going to dive into that. It's sales is like a sport, right? It's high stakes, but it's also the ultimate proving ground. This guy knows his sales. You're not just going to be moved by what he has to say, but you're going to be moved by all the things that he has to transform other people's lives. His journey is all about overcoming adversity, pushing past limiting beliefs, and building success on his own terms. So get ready, guys. I'm excited to help introduce our guest today. Please help me welcome to the show, Markus. Markus, what's up, man? Welcome to the Closers Network.
It's a pleasure to be here. After this introduction, I don't even have to say anything. It's like I'm ready to fight. I'm feeling like Ali now.
So help me understand this, Markus. So you got started selling. You started selling around the age of 15, right? Selling bikes Correct. And reselling sneakers. Like, help me understand, like, what got you to think to even start doing that? I'm just curious.
I think it was just like an impulse, like knowing that behind a sale, there's so much more that you can learn, and so much psychology involved, understanding human-to-human interaction, that even when you're young, you understand that in order to succeed in life, it's beneficial to have these skills. So it's kind of like an instinct. I think it was always just there, knowing that it can help you in the long run. So that's kind of how I got started. And the first thing to do was, selling bikes. And now we're here. So, yeah.
That's awesome. Do you feel like there's any lessons that you learned when you had to sell some bikes that has translated into the world of remote high ticket sales today at all?
I would say is definitely, building rapport with different types of client types that there are. Just understanding how to read the person. Every single person is different. So
That's right.
There's so much to just a basic conversation, interaction, and you need to figure out how you can give a person something that makes them want to buy it. Right?
Love that.
So I think that's what translated over.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. So, dude, you're a model. So help us understand what was the point for you that got you to realize, like, okay, cool, like maybe I love being a model, but you made a bold transition into model to remote high ticket sales, right? That's not actually, I know one other closer that's done that. And it wasn't necessarily straight from modeling to closing, but I don't know if you know Ralph Jacob. He's on the V-Shred team as well. I've had him on the podcast before, but Ralph was a model in the past.
Interesting.
Yeah, and then he ran gyms, but he shut down his gyms to get into remote high ticket sales. So Ralph's a really awesome dude, but he has a similar background and actually grew up like on the streets of Paris and got to see that whole thing. And the bazaar and just did a lot of modeling and been around the block, been around a lot of people, but went from that to starting gyms and then now into remote high ticket. But for you, what was maybe the turning point that made you realize like, hey man, maybe modeling is not going to give you the control that you want over your income? Like when did you realize that?
Well, first of all, I obviously need to say, if it's not like I'm the best fucking model in the world, right? If I would be on the top, chances are, income would look very different. But in order to be that small percentage of people who make a very good living in modeling, it's very difficult, and it's something that you cannot control. Yes, you can work on yourself. You can try to look your best. You can work with amazing people, but it's ultimately dependent on what other people think of you. And after doing it for a year or so, I realized it. And I realized I don't want that to be the determining factor if I'm successful or not. So I knew I had to do something where I'm in control of the input that I put in and the output that gets produced, which is why I looked at my past. I saw, I was selling back then. Okay, if I make the sale, I can make commissions. I can help other people doing that. So kind of connected the dots. And yeah, pretty like within a year after starting modeling, I looked for other avenues. And thankfully, I found you guys.
Wow, that's crazy. So to kind of back up a little and break that down. So what I hear you saying is, hey man, like, I love the idea of being a model, but one of the things that I'm not too fond of is the idea that somebody else is in kind of control of my destiny. They're just kind of like actors, right? There's a lot of actors that you hear that get into Hollywood, come in and like, it's like, hey man, like if they don't like you and you're not in that little circle or something, you're probably not going to get the role. I would imagine modeling works a little bit similar. So it wasn't something you had 100% control over. So you didn't necessarily like that. And so what you realize is, hey man, like I want a vehicle and something that I am 100% in control over, so that if I do put in the effort, I can actually get the maximum result.
100%, Mike. Yeah. And I would even argue that modeling is I would even say it's a bit more difficult than acting in terms of like controlling your destiny, because it's purely based on looks. It's based on looks, maybe a lot on connections as well. Acting, you have to have the skill, right? If the skill is not there, it won't lead to anything. But in modeling, there's no like major skill. There are a few things, of course, but what I found is I want to be 100% in control of my destiny.
I love that. I love that, man. I love that. Yeah, I'm in agreement with you, and I think that's beautiful, right? Just the fact that like, hey man, I'm willing to put in the effort. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I just want to make sure I can get the result by doing that and having the proper vehicle for it. So that's awesome. One of the things that you shared with me is, you described sales as a sport, right? And it's got, a lot of pressure. It's got high stakes. And help us understand, like, when you made the transition from modeling into sales, like, did you have to change any of your routines, any of your habits? And what did that kind of look like? Like, was there a lot of pressure? Was it just like pretty easy going for you? What did that journey look like for you in this transition?
Yeah, I would say in modeling, like, there's no structure. Every single day can look different. There's no guarantee that you have a job on every single day. So sometimes a week can be super busy. You can be flying from one place to the other. Another week you can have nothing. And this can go on for 2, 3, 4 weeks, months even, right? So there's no structure. And sales is completely the opposite. The more structured you are, the more you can measure, the more you keep track of the numbers, the better you understand where you're at, what you need to improve in order to get to where you want to go. So understanding that was the first step. The second step, and always the most difficult thing, is the actual implementation, right? And this is a process that, never really ends. I think it's just continue growing and understanding how we can tweak that. But I like that a lot more, because again, it gives you the feeling of control.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, one of my earliest mentors, a guy named Ken Lynch. Believe it or not, Ken was the sales director of Fit Body Bootcamp, a franchise that Richard, by the way, guys, is our founder and CEO of One Call Closers. Richard and I used to work together at Fit Body Bootcamp selling franchises for Bedros. And Ken, Bedros Keuilian, he's he's kind of like the Tony Robbins of the fitness industry. But one of the things Ken always shared with Rich and I was, hey, man, what gets measured gets improved, right? And so that's exactly right. And that's what sales is. It allows you to be able to measure your progress. And it is all about just constant and never-ending improvement, right? And so one of our earlier accounts that we sold for starting out was Tony Robbins and Dean Graciosi here at One Call Closers, our sales agency. And I remember Dean said to me one day, he's like, hey, man, what gets measured? He said, Tony Robbins and Dean said, Mike, it's so they embodied this thought of kanai in me, and kanai is just like constant and never-ending improvement, right? And that's exactly what sales is. It's just constant and never-ending improvement. It's like no matter how good your call was, and even if you got the close, there's always still room for improvement in that call. There's probably something you could have done a little bit better if you look back at it, right? So it does give you that opportunity to be able to continue to implement, get better, and become the best version of yourself, which is awesome. And another thing is like, no matter how good you are in the world of sales, right? You're only as good as your last sale. So it's like, it doesn't matter what you did last year, last month, or even yesterday for that matter, is that how you show up today is going to be really where it's at, right? So I think that's powerful.
100%, Mike. There is no final destination, right? Just like in life, there's no like place where everything stops. So it's powerful to always continue the journey of learning and improvement.
That's right. Speaking of improvement and maybe culture, right? You've been in 10 countries before 25, right? So for me, I moved in the last 6 years 6 times, so it's been like a move a year, and it's been intense. And I decided I'm probably going to cut that out for a little bit. But help us understand, like living that lifestyle of being able to move around. Do you think at all? Because Ralph shared this with me. Because Ralph had a lot of experience moving around and stuff. And he said like that kind of culturalized him, right? Because he saw so many different cultures, so many different ways of people living and doing things. And it just gave him perspective that maybe a person that hasn't traveled hasn't had. So for you, how do you feel like living in 10 countries before the age of 25 has maybe impacted like how you do sales today or just how you do life today?
That's a very good question. And I've definitely been in more than 10 countries, but I've lived already like in 10 countries.
Wow.
So I would say it helps you understand, the human as a race kind of, because it's so different, every single culture. So really understanding and being able to connect with a different culture where you don't speak the language, where you don't know their culture, you don't know how they behave, what is seen as good, what is seen as bad, and still learning how to connect with them in a human way, it helps you. It helps you understand how to read people, how to be able to give them something back. And that's just a powerful tool. And also just the fact of you are able to see so many different things. It broadens also your perception about what is possible, what can be achieved, and all the possibilities that exist in this world. And that's, I think, the most beautiful thing, experiencing different things, learning from it, and kind of goes with the same as what we mentioned before, about never ending this learning process.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. No, that's absolutely true. And I do believe that, right? Because like the more I've traveled in my life, the more I realize I've noticed things and I've understood things a lot better. That's why one of the things I'm really big on. First of all, I'm grateful for my parents for taking me as many places as they did take me. It wasn't all around the world by any means, but just a few places that they took me was still enough for me to be able to get different perspectives and get culturalized a little bit. And so I think there's a lot of value in that because you get to see how things are done, right? And it does give you different perspectives and be able to understand people and relate to them in different ways. And I think a lot of sales is making sure that your prospect does feel heard and understood, right? And there's something there where it's like you're not just there to get a sale, like they actually feel like you're there because you care, right? If you're just there because you have commission breath and you're there to get a sale, then the prospect's going to absolutely notice that and be like, man, this guy's not really there because they care about me. They're just there to, close me, right? But there's a different feeling that you can give off if you can show that you're genuinely interested and make them feel heard and understood, that then essentially turns into a sale. And it's something where it's just a lot more powerful than just, having that commission
100%.
breath, right? So for sure.
Yeah, I would say that's kind of the biggest transition for me that happened. Like understanding that it's not just about selling something, it's about helping the other person if the need for that person is truly there, right? And that selling is not just, making a quick sale, making a quick buck. It's about changing something because without a sale, there's no change.
I love that.
That's definitely
powerful. That was actually going to be my next question I got into was like, hey, you got into a mindset shift from selling a product to helping someone. How does one go from that? How does one go from like, hey, I suppose I'm just there to sell a product. Like, how do I reframe my brain to go to like, man, I'm here to like help someone become the best version of who they want to be? Like, can you share a little bit about that? Or if you have a story maybe of someone that like you've sold before that you can talk about, or I would love some insight on how you reshifted your mind to think that way.
I think that's based on experience, really, on the experience of, what I sell is fitness, and fitness is something I've done my whole life. So it's my lifestyle. And I know that if I do it, it improves my life, my health, my longevity. And it's just overall good for me to do it. So I know that if I sell a program that I know 100% works, and that is also based on experience, what I've seen with clients, that it helps them improve their life, it gives me ultimate conviction that it works. And that if they have told me, my life right now is this, but I want to have this, and losing weight, improving health and fitness will get them there, then you just have to connect the dots. And that's how I think, you can transition from that mindset and that belief that it's more than just a coaching program or the key elements of what is entailed. It's more about what's behind that. What's that going to allow you to become?
Oh man, that's so powerful right there, guys. That's golden nuggets on gold. I wish I could have freaking put my little soundboard on here. It's hard to do on this virtual, but damn, yes. There's so much value in what Markus is saying, guys, right now. Is like, do you have belief in what you're selling, right? Have you actually experienced that yourself like he has through fitness, right? And then know that, no, this product and service can actually help change a life. And he's just willing to have an honest conversation with people about where they're at and where they're looking to go is what I hear him saying. So that's so powerful. That's so powerful. Dude, definitely. One of the things I'm really interested to hear in having this conversation with you is you decided that, hey, I don't want to do nothing more with like a 9-to-5, and I don't want to necessarily pursue corporate. What the heck happened for you to feel that way? And like, what made you, and how did you find remote high ticket closing? Like, but what essentially, like, I want to know what was it about corporate that you made you feel like I don't want to go back?
It's so different, high ticket closing to normal corporate. The biggest moment for me was right after I graduated. I did an internship. Well, in order to graduate, I had to do the internship. And it was a 9 to 6 p.m. thing, like 9 a.m., 6 p.m., 5 days out of the week, doing something I absolutely hated. And, it was for a decent company, but, they said, this is what you will be doing. And it sounded so amazing. And then you get in there and you just notice that you're like a small little thing out of a huge enterprise, and just feeling like, what you do on a daily basis doesn't have a real impact. And then also being trapped kind of in, you're being measured by your time. The only value that you bring is your time. I don't know, for me, it was kind of a wake-up call that I won't be happy doing this the next few years, so I have to take action and change that. So yeah, I left that after 3 months, and I swore to myself I would never do a corporate job again. And
Wow.
funny enough, that was 3 years ago, or actually, yeah, 3.5 years ago. And I was living in Barcelona back then. And now, 3.5 years later, I'm back in Barcelona. But yeah, now living more on my own terms. So that's what high ticket closing has allowed me to do. And I'm very grateful for that.
Damn. The one most powerful thing I heard you say is that you realized you were destined for more. And I love that, man, because there's so many people out there right now that know that believe that feel something inside of them. Oh, dang. Hold on one second. My earpiece fell out here. It's getting too hot over here, baby. Come on, it's getting too hot. No, but there's so many people, Markus, that feel that way, that know that they don't want to be working that job. They don't want to be exchanging money for time. And like you said, you realize that your only value there is giving time, right? And that you're not having impact on a daily basis. There's so many people that feel that way, but they don't do anything about it, right? They just stay stuck where they are. They stay stagnant, and they go back into that 9 to 6 grind, working 5 days a week, doing the same things again, and only having a Saturday or Sunday to look forward to. And the rest of their life is just like miserable. And it's just so crazy because it's like they don't take the chance. They're not willing to bet on themselves. They're not looking to take a risk, right? So I always wonder, like, what's the thing that gets someone to make the decision versus not? Like, is it just sick and tired of being sick and tired and like, I'm done with this, right? Or is it just like, no, I'm just gonna do this because it's the safer thing to do, right? And I'm not gonna necessarily make a change. And this is the path that's safe, right? Because I don't know what the other side holds for me, right? I don't know about what it's gonna be like to have a commission-only job. I don't know what I'm gonna experience and what struggles I may or may not have, right? But guys, like Markus is giving a lot of gold nuggets right now, right? But it's like, and I'll let you say it, but what for you, what would you, was it just like a moment where it just clicked and that was it? Like kind of you mentioned like a little bit earlier, like what was the biggest thing? If there was one thing you had to say, was it just, I don't want to be stuck. Like, I don't want to be doing this and exchanging just time for money?
Very good question. I would say it was two things. Number one, kind of the internal voice. I think many people have that, just something telling you you're destined for something different. You're destined to be, you want to do something different. It's not only about destiny and about, I'm not better than anybody else, right? It's more about, I understand who I am, and that version of me that I want to become wouldn't settle for what I had back then. That's the one thing. And the other thing was actually that after 3 months of doing that internship, I felt becoming comfortable already. I felt that, actually it's not that bad. I have safety, I have my paycheck. And I think that moment there was for me, fuck man, I have to get the shit out of here because if I don't do it, who knows, it might not happen. For me, I knew I would do it. There was no doubt in my mind, but I think that's kind of what you were talking about earlier. That's what keeps a lot of people in there. It's the comfort. It's knowing what's going to happen. And it comes, doing something like this, closing, it comes with a lot of pressure because as you mentioned, you're only as good as your last sale. You're only as good as what you produce. And if you don't put the work in, you're not going to get anything out. But there's something very beautiful that comes with that, because you are ultimately responsible for what you achieve. And yeah, that's a beautiful thing.
That's awesome, man. So guys, if you're listening right now out there, do you have an internal voice that's speaking to you, right? But you're not necessarily listening to it. You're falling back into a trap of safety, right? Because like Markus said, like, exactly what's going to come around the corner with that, as opposed to walking into the unknown, right? And he said something like, who am I? Who do I want to become? Right. And to Markus's point, I'm the same way. Like the only corporate job I've ever worked in my entire life was working with Rich at the Fit Body Bootcamp franchise. But honestly, it wasn't that corporate, even though it was a corporate company. It was like very loose and it was just like a totally different vibe. But like I knew before I even started that job, I was running a trucking company, right? I was in real estate before. I just knew that corporate was not for me. It's just no way I could live that life, right? So who are you? Who do you want to be is a question that you want to answer. And do you have an internal voice that's talking to you? And what is it saying, right? Just some food for thought. A couple things I want to dive into, man, before we wrap it up. So you've been, how long have you been closing now at One Call Closers, our sales agency?
I've been since end of January. I would say like February was my first month. So it's been what, 8 months?
About eight months. Yeah, 8 months. Okay, cool. So you've been there about 8 months. You're selling a fitness offer. I would imagine it's for V-Shred.
Correct. Yes.
So help us understand like your transition from your first month, where you were at mentally maybe, and then where you're at now, like as far as how far you've come. And then I kind of want to dive into what that's looked like as far as performance as well, financially, right? But I'd love to know like the mindset you maybe started with and the mindset now, if you don't mind sharing it, if you can talk about that a little bit.
The biggest challenge for me has been obviously that I'm not native English speaker. I'm half German, half Mexican, actually. So it was my first step into this world of actually like selling something in English and speaking English every single day, right?
Yeah.
So that was a huge challenge initially because culture-wise, language-wise, it's so different. Before I was doing everything in German. So that transition was huge. Initially, it was, difficult to express myself. And to this day, this is one of the biggest challenges that I face. Not knowing how to say specifically what in the way of what I'm thinking. Kind of what just happened there. I made like a small mistake. So that is a challenge I was faced, especially in the beginning with. But then also having the conviction that it's not just about selling something. It's about helping a person achieve becoming a better version of themselves. Having that click. So that's what I've been working on 8 months now. And also ultimately how you feel about the money, about finances. Because if you don't have conviction, if you don't have confidence, and you try to pitch a guy who is 40 years older than you, who is a CEO, and you try to pitch them on a program that costs more than what you've ever made in a month, it's going to be very difficult for you to bring that over in a way that makes him want to buy, right? Yeah, just breaking free of limited beliefs when it comes to money, that's also been huge.
How did you break those beliefs? Is it just you started slowly making some money and it started kind of breaking some of those beliefs for you? How did that look like for you?
Yeah, I would definitely say so. That's been a part of it. I've also used a little tool, which is called it's kind of like a tool I read in a book. It's by a guy called David Bayer. It's kind of how to change and shift your beliefs. Essentially, it's if you understand you have a limited belief, the first thing to do is realize what you have. Then you have to decide that it's not the right way to think. And if that's not the right way to think because it has kept you where you are, you need to decide that ultimately the opposite of that is the truth. Right? So that's what I kind of did there. And with experience, and the more you do it, and the more you also talk, take calls, all that stuff, the more that shifts. And I'm nowhere near I want to be. Like, I'll be upfront, I'm nowhere close to where I want to be, but I'm closer than I have ever been to the version of who I want to become. So that's also progress there.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. It's so funny you said that because, I was training a new closer coming on board, right? And he was on a conversation with the prospect, and the prospect was telling him how he was just at like a Korean barbecue restaurant, right? Which is basically like $30 or $40 per person to eat here in the States. And then my closer was like, oh man, Korean barbecue, those dinners are so expensive. Like, they're so expensive. And he kept talking about it. I'm like, bro. I was like, hold on. Back up for a second. I was like, you can't talk about being a remote high ticket closer and how $30 or $40 is expensive for you. It's not in alignment to your message. You can't be jumping on a call with the prospect and telling him $30, $40 is expensive. that tells me where you are
100%.
about money in your mind, right? And if you think
That's
$30 or $40 is a lot, then how the heck are you going to get someone to give you 2,000, 4,000, 5,000, 6,000, 10,000, 15,000, right? It's going to be a challenge. But I love the mindset reframe that you said. It's like, hey, you gave us a tangible way we can go and change our perspective around money. You mentioned was it what was the person's name? Sorry,
David Bayer. He's called
David Bayer. So check out David Bayer's stuff, guys, if you need help reshifting your
Yeah.
perspective a little bit there, right? But I think there's a lot of power too in what you're saying around like, dude, English isn't your first language and you're still able to close. So one of the things I'd love to hear from you, right, with all of these different limitations that have been ahead of you, whether it's the mindset, whether it's the background, whether it's just not having really any tangible sales experience, whether it's like English being the second language, but you still showed up, you stayed disciplined, you've gotten to be able to get yourself to a certain level, right? You mentioned last month was your best month to me at One Call Closers. So help us understand, like, what does that month financially look like for you? What's been your best month here at One Call Closers?
Yeah, so that has definitely been a big journey because, yeah, my first month, I think, was $300 in commission.
$300 your first month. So this is back in February.
Yes, that was back in February.
Okay.
And then it was like a little bump. Then it was like 5K. Now the last month was indeed my best one, and that in closing I did 15K. So
let's go! Damn, $15,000 from making 300 to your first month to having a 3K month, a 5K month, probably gradual increases from there to getting to a spot where you did $15,000. That's freaking awesome, Markus. Good for you, man. By the way, guys, if you can't do the math on that, if he just adds another about 1,000 or so a month to that, that's already making multiple six figures a year if he just keeps it up at that same pace, right? That's 200,000 plus a year. If he does about 16.5 a month, you're looking at a multiple six-figure opportunity, right? So that's crazy that you go from 300 to 3K to 5K and work your way up to $15,000, man. How does that feel now, knowing that your first month was only $300 in commissions?
I mean, it feels like a step in the right direction. 100%. I feel good about it. As I mentioned before, I'm nowhere near that level. I want to be at one point, and I know that a lot of people here that I really respect, they have achieved so much more. But the thing is, you're right. You have to measure yourself with your own steps, with your own challenges, what you've been facing, and that's ultimately what's gonna help you become better. And yeah, the longer you operate in this kind of space, also the more you understand, how small shifts can increase the bigger picture. Just by maybe selling a bit more, upselling someone, or just pitching a program which is just $100 more in commission for you. In the long run, it can make a huge difference. So yeah, it's a process, but yeah, I'm definitely very proud to be here, to be part of the team, and yeah, it's been a pleasure with you guys. So
that's awesome, man. That's awesome. Absolutely, we're grateful for you, man. So, if you don't mind me asking, how much were you making at the corporate job, working and trading the time for dollars over there?
That was 500 euros a month.
Wow! What? Yeah. What? 500 euros a month to $15,000? Dude, that's freaking insane. That's insane. Yeah. That's awesome, dude. So life's looking a lot different for you these days than it was working the corporate job.
Definitely. Definitely. But yeah.
Have you splurged on anything? Have you bought anything that you normally wouldn't buy? Have you traveled more? Is there anything you spent the money on that you're like, man, I love this?
I invest a lot. Like that's probably 60% of all my income. I either put it in savings or investments.
Good for you.
A bit more boring when it comes to that. But yeah, it's for me, it's for the long run. But yeah, if anything, I would say traveling. That's what I love to also invest in. For me, that's an investment.
Yeah.
And just being able to not worry about, eating where you want to be, where you want to eat out, inviting the family, giving back, that is just the best feeling that inspires me the most, to be honest with you.
Oh man, I love that so much. I'm the same way, dude. and I never thought about it in those exact words until you just said it, and I'm going to ride with that for the rest of my life, is traveling is an investment for me too. But I never said that in those exact words before. But I'm always like, dude, traveling has such a big purpose in my life. Like, everything I do and everything how I see life is just about like going and seeing the world, so it's like it means so much to me. It fulfills me, it feeds my soul, right? It gives me energy, it refreshes me, re-energizes me. So I love that, because it's like, dude, like, yeah, I made an investment into traveling, and that's exactly right. And I love the fact you're actually investing your money, 60% of it, into stuff, right? People want to hear that. People don't just necessarily want to hear, I went and bought a car, I went and bought this thing, I went and bought that thing. It's like, dude, the fact that you are investing most of your money is great. I think there's a lot of people out there that are like, dude, I want to be doing the same thing. I don't necessarily care about the watches. I don't care about the cars, Mike. I don't care about this stuff. I want to also travel. I want to also invest in stuff that gives me some return on my money, right? So I love that, man. I think that's so powerful. And I think there's so many people out there that are like, I want to do the same exact thing, right? And guys, if you are out there right now and you're looking to do the same exact thing as Markus, you can actually have an opportunity to work for our sales agency, One Call Closers, right? And if you're serious about that, join our school community. Click the second link in the description below. It's completely free, right, guys? We give you 5 days a week, live free coaching. The same individuals that have scaled our sales agency to over $200 million in just 5 years are the same individuals who are giving you free coaching inside of our free school community, right? The Closers Network. And guys, we have courses in there. We give you our frameworks. We show you exactly how we do things. You combine that with the live coaching calls we do 5 days a week. The top coaches in the entire space, like world-class coaches, you can leverage that all for free, right? And if you're looking to actually take it to the next level and get some training plus placement on an offer with Markus or on any of our other offers, then guys, you can absolutely do that too, right? DM me inside of our school platform or click the first link in the description below, and you can learn a little bit more about some training plus placement opportunities with us. But that being said, Markus, before we wrap it up here, man, is there any final thoughts that you have? Is there anything that you haven't talked about with our listener that maybe you want to share with them?
Kind of touching on what you said, people want to like invest in themselves and invest in the long run. I think if you choose this way, this path, you're really setting yourself up for the long run. You understand that, it's not just about the short-term pleasure, it's about who you want to become in the long run. And if you go this path, you need to do a lot of sacrifice. It can be difficult. It can be isolating at times. You will feel struggling a lot of times, but once you build a solid foundation with that and you're good with that, you don't need to buy a watch. You don't need to buy a car to feel good. I mean, sure, it's nice like to play around with, but it's about something more deep, just knowing who you want to be and being that version of yourself, really. So that's the most important piece. If I would give some sort of advice to others, it would definitely be try to figure out who you are, right? And if all of this is resonating with you, I would definitely recommend checking out One Call Closers, the Closers Network. For me, it has changed my life. So I'm so grateful for all of the coaches, you, Mike, Rich, Trish, all these amazing people for this amazing opportunity. And I would do it over and over again.
There we have it. Markus, I'm kind of saddened that I'm not going to see you next week for our Christmas party because you're not going to be able to make it out. But I'm excited, man, to stay in touch with you and really just continue hearing about your journey here at One Call Closers, because I know where you're at now is not definitely the end for you, especially knowing how you've been climbing up that ladder, man. And I know there's so much more opportunity for you here. So I'm excited, man. I can't wait to see your future successes. Would love to see you down here next year for our next Christmas party or any events that we do in between. I can't wait to meet you in person, dude. But hey, I just want to say thank you so much for making the time and doing this on the fly. Like literally, I hit you up like yesterday. I was like, hey, dude, are you available 10 a.m. for a podcast tomorrow? You're like, let's do it, man. And here's another thing, guys. I did this with Joanna last week. If you guys missed our last week's episode, it was with Joanna. And same thing, I reached out to Joanna like literally less than 24 hours before and asked if they're available. And they said, yes. Here's what I realized about people that can make fast decisions. They're able to make fast money, right? One of my mentors, Bedros, early on told me, money loves speed, Mike. So if you can make decisions quickly, you can process issues, you're going to do fantastic, right? In the world of remote high ticket sales. And one thing to ponder on and think about from this specific episode, guys, like Marcus said, who do you want to be? Right? Who do you want to be? Think about that and really put some deep thought into it, right? Not just surface level stuff. Go in a layer or two deeper and really answer that question for yourself and really ask yourself, is who I want to be, is what I'm doing right now in alignment with who I want to be, right? And if it's not, then there's some things you got to think about there for yourself, right? But that being said, Marcus, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate you making the time. I'm really looking forward to having you back on, man. Can't wait to do it again.
Awesome, Mike. It was a pleasure. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you guys as well.